talking about a news story that we think is quite interesting as women in business. And this week's no different. Times newspaper released a story. I'm going to read it to you guys. It's called Africa, China's New Frontier. They go on to say Chinese entrepreneurs are invading Africa, the fortunes of the world's poorest continent. They pose the question, are they just stripping it of its resources, or are they actually doing something that the West has not been able to do? Ladies, what do we reckon?
Oh, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about foreign investment here, and I think foreign investment is always good. The thing with Africa, though, I feel like it's been, I don't know, almost invaded so many times. I mean, it's been famously invaded by the West and now China. I don't know, I'm sort of like on the bench here. I'm not quite sure if it's a case of them going in and taking what they can to line their own pockets, you know, some kind of form of exploitation, or whether they are actually helping the African people and the African economy. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not quite sure.
I think any sort of foreign investment has positives and negatives to it, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think one thing that struck me in the article that we read was that China are bringing their own workforce over, and they're almost setting up their own kind of communes, and they're, you know, eating Chinese food, not learning the language, not sort of having any interest in the sort of culture.
Not integrating.
So no
I mean,
integration.
the article even said that they don't even speak English, that some of the workers that are coming over don't speak English, much less an African language.
And they tend to employ, I think, sort of 70% or something Chinese workforce. But then again, all the construction that's gone on as a result of the investment, it mentions the bridge through, is it Tanzania?
Right.
That's enabled, you know, goods to be cheaper goods to be shipped in, which has had a good, I think it's been good because, you know, they've set up factories, but also it's been bad in terms of cheaper Chinese goods coming in and then sort of local factories going out of business. So it's flip side.
You can argue that, you know, that's happening in the UK, you know, the cheap imports. But in the long term, it could actually create more jobs.
Yeah.
Some people do think it doesn't, you know, you just move away from the manufacturing and go into the service sector. And when investment goes into Africa, as long as it's properly managed, because they can't just go into the country, the African leaders have to give them permission to actually buy land or set up or lease or whatever. So it's up to the African leaders to be conscious and, you know, properly manage the situation.
Africa's had a bit of a history, hasn't it, in terms of bad leadership. And it's such a shame because Africa has got so much resources. Just reading this thing here from The Economy, and it goes on to say that it has 90% of the world's platinum, 90%, 50% of its gold, 98% of its chromium, and 64% of its magnesium. I mean, that's amazing. It's such a rich sort of culture. And I'm just scared that once again it's going to get robbed of all its resources.
I don't know. I think it's when I was reading about it, I thought some of the stuff was really, really positive that hasn't been said before about the sort of the development of the African economy. You know, and China's going into the agricultural side as well, and increasing the productivity of agriculture.
Absolutely, and that is needed, and that is needed.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of. How about you?
Well, it's interesting because we did a poll online on Sisterhood's website, and the aim was to find out what people of African descent felt about it, and 57% were not happy with with Chinese investment, and the reasons were a loss of jobs for local people, and then the second reason was that they felt there wasn't an education system being set up in place to support the local people. So when the Chinese investors choose to leave and something is left, local people can then run it. And so, you know, I think it's interesting. I kind of agree with you, Abby, in that it's one of those where it can have a double-edged sword.
Right.
I just think that we should watch this space, really.
See what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, if you have an opinion on this story, go onto our website, sisterhoodtv.com. We want to hear what you have to say.